So Fromsoftware is my favorite game studio by far. So when I heard that there was a bad actor attempting to take over their parent company and then force them to put microtransactions in all of their games, you could say I was a little concerned. But I'm happy to report that is not the case. Probably. But there is a lot going on, and it's not quite clear what the future holds. So today we're going to take a deep dive into this whole situation, and I will do my best to explain exactly what's happening and what it could mean for the future of Fromsoftware. Let's start with a brief overview of the situation, just to give you an idea of what exactly is happening. Fromsoftware is owned by Kadokawa, a publicly traded company whose top shareholder for a while now was Sony at about 10%. But then back in March, a group called Oasis Management overtook them and now owns about 15.25%. And with that majority stake, they attempted to oust the current CEO of Kadokawa, Takeshi Natsuno, alleging that under his leadership, the company was not properly leveraging their assets, primarily Elden Ring and Fromsoftware. Now, as of a meeting earlier this month, they failed in that endeavor, at least for the time being, but there is a lot to this situation that we need to examine. First, let's start with Oasis Management, and most importantly, who they are. Oasis Management is a Hong Kong-based hedge fund led by Seth Fisher. More on him in a little bit. And they first became a shareholder in Kadokawa back in 2020. And to be fair to them, what they're trying to do is not coming out of nowhere. They have been putting pressure on Kadokawa pretty much from the beginning. Up till now, they have been engaging more mildly through IR meetings, formal letters to the company, meetings with executives, and even with the CEO himself, the same CEO that they are now trying to get rid of. Back in May, they formally launched a campaign called A Better Kadokawa with a website and everything. Now, there are multiple points that they make in this campaign, but I'm going to focus on what I believe are the two biggest ones. The first being the poor performance underneath Natsuno's leadership. Oasis says that underneath Natsuno, operating profit, operating margin, earnings per share, and return on equity have all declined. Now, it is unclear if this decline is due to poor management or due to the spike of Elden Ring. You see, Natsuno took over in 2021, just before Elden Ring's launch in 2022. And as we all know, Elden Ring went completely interstellar and caused a huge jump in profits for the company. So anytime you have a giant spike on a chart, anything that comes after it will look poor in comparison, even if it isn't really. Now, it could very well be that there are things going on behind the scenes that have led to poor performance, or maybe the performance would have been better if those things didn't happen. All I'm saying is that I'm not so sure that what they're alleging paints the entire picture. But their second point is a little more convincing, at least from an investor's standpoint. What they say is that Kadokawa has been mishandling Elden Ring's success. Now, they're not saying this as a push for Elden Ring slop or Elden Ring mobile, at least not up front. More on that later. Instead, they are pointing to the fact that Bandai Namco has been publishing all of Fromsoftware's games outside of Japan. Fromsoftware does self-publish inside of Japan, but Bandai Namco handles everything else. This is a strategic partnership that has been taking place ever since Demon's Souls, and back then it made a ton of sense. Basically, Bandai Namco handles the cost, marketing, headache, and risk of global publishing, and Fromsoftware is free to focus on making great games. Global publishing is a very expensive thing to do, and an experienced publisher like Bandai Namco has both the funding and the connections to get it done smoothly without FromSoft having to take on all that headache and risk. But in exchange for lowered risk, FromSoftware has to pay a portion of the profits to Bandai Namco. The exact amount is not publicly known, but publishers typically get 30 to 50% of the net revenue. So to put that in more official terms, they're making a friggin' butt ton. So this is money that Oasis is describing as profit leakage. Money that Oasis would rather rather have as investment returns by having Fromsoftware self-publish globally. Now, to be fair, I do think that Fromsoftware is starting to get to the point where they may have outgrown Bandai Namco. There is a lot of profit being left on the table, and Fromsoftware has a big enough audience and enough name recognition that as soon as they announce a new game, the entire internet lights on fire. So they're probably at the point now where self-publishing starts to make a lot of sense. This isn't the Demon Souls days. They've come a long way since then, and I think that it probably is time for them to explore that avenue. But even with their success, that doesn't negate the risk entirely. If a game performs bad, they are on the hook for a lot more money if they are the developer and the publisher. So perhaps this has played a role into why they've continued to use Bandai Namco. If Fromsoftware had to worry about recouping a much larger investment in a game, this may influence their decisions and push them towards a safer game development style. And since FromSoft has thrived on taking risks and stepping outside the norm, that could be really bad. But with all that said, FromSoftware has been moving towards self-publishing in recent years. Recent strategic investments from Sony and Tencent were partially aimed at creating capacity for self-publishing. They also bought the full trademark rights for Elden Ring back in 2023, giving them full control over the IP. And in a 2026 Kadokawa financial report, it was explicitly stated that FromSoftware was moving towards self-publishing. So this is something that's in the works and probably will happen, just not fast enough for Oasis, I guess. So those are their two big complaints: poor management leading to declining profits, and money being left on the table that could be going to investors. But I think there could be something bigger going on, sort of festering underneath the surface. I think we need to ask the question, is Oasis being honest about their motivations for ousting the CEO? Now, this is some Candace Owens level type of speculation here, but just bear with me. Asha Sharma's actually a man. Let's take a little deeper look into the man behind the Oasis management group, Seth Fisher. Fisher founded Oasis back in 2002, and he is a long-term, research-driven activist investor. Now, activist in investments is not the same as like activists in art galleries. It means that when he buys stocks in companies, he does it with the intention of pushing for some kind of change that he believes will increase profits. Long term means that he doesn't have a track record of buying, doing a bunch of whining, and then selling a year later to go do it somewhere else. What he buys, he typically sticks with for years and continues to apply steady, patient pressure for his cause. And in the case of Kadokawa, he has been doing just that for 6 years now. And he's research driven in that he does extensive research both before and during his investments. Case in point would be the presentation that he put together analyzing Kadokawa's business dealings. It was over 130 pages long. Now, these three things put together make for a very persistent and persuasive actor that could do great good or great bad. But even with all that said, Fisher is far from the only activist investor out there. So why would all this be alarming? Well, not only does Fisher have a record for pressuring companies to change their business model and succeeding, but what he pressures for, most would call anti-consumer. His most famous endeavor was a 3-year-long campaign spanning from 2013 to 2016, pressuring Nintendo to enter the mobile gaming space and capitalize on in-app purchases. One of his most heavily memed lines from that time is something like, "Imagine if you could pay 99 cents to make Mario jump higher." Yeah, he's that dude. And while Nintendo didn't go quite that far, a little app in 2016 popped up called Pokemon Go and graced the various app stores. Now, I say all that to show that Oasis and Fisher have a proven track record of influencing company directions, and their recommendations seem to have a common theme of profit overall. Now, this by no means is to say that they are definitely going to try to do some of that stuff with Kadokawa. They could very well be happy with just increasing profits and having Fromsoftware self-publish their games, which honestly I feel like is a good move as well. But I could also see a world where they oust this CEO to try and get someone else in who might be more sympathetic to their profit driven motivations. Because up to this point, the leadership of Kadokawa, both Natsuno and before him, have been very hands off with Fromsoftware and allowed them to do what they do best, which is exactly what we, the players, should want. We do not want a leash around Fromsoftware. They have proven that they can create banger after banger after banger. And so why would you start to try and fix what isn't broken? But there is some silver lining even to like a worst case scenario where Oasis takes over Kadokawa and they install their sympathetic CEO, and then they force Fromsoftware to create Elden Ring mobile. If something like that were to happen, I highly doubt Miyazaki would go along with it. I honestly think he would resign and start his own indie studio before he would dip his bare feet into the poison slop of something like that. But there's even better news than that. Miyazaki has come out and actually addressed this whole situation and reassured fans that as it stands now, Fromsoftware is still free to make the games that they want to make. And he even threw in a little teaser at the end, just confirming that they have some unannounced titles in the works, which, I mean, we already knew they're a game studio, so like, what the F else would they have in the works, you know what I mean? But anytime Miyazaki talks about things that they're working on that haven't been announced yet, everybody gets excited, which is a true testament to their greatness, I think. But anyway, I hope this brings you up to speed on the situation. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think this is a big nothing burger, or do you think we are about to pay $4.99 for more iframes?